Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to see everybody here for the first District 3 meeting. We'll give folks a minute to jump in from the waiting room. Good to see folks. Good to see folks. Thank you. I see all our friends are here. Give folks one more minute before we start, maybe in just 30 seconds or so. Thanks to Dr. Bracken for joining us too. I appreciate that. First District 3 meeting of the year. It's always one of my favorite District 3 meetings. All right, Keith, are we
Yes, sir.
good? Are we
in the room?
We're good to go?
Yep, we're good to go.
Awesome. All right, everybody, welcome to your District 3 community meeting. We're a month into the school year. It's hard to believe. I'm trying to remember when it started, but it seems like once it starts, it just keeps going. So for those of you that have been to this meeting before, thanks for coming back. Just to level set a little bit, what we do here is we share some things that are going on in the district. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the district. We lift up a couple key items that from the last board meeting that we want to share. It's important for me to hear your perspective. This is really an opportunity to get some direct feedback. It's not a decision-making meeting. We don't vote on anything here. This isn't about trying to necessarily solve problems as much as sharing your input. So I can take that back, and we've got a lot of staff on the call too. Thank you, staff, for being here. They need to hear some of your feedback too, so we can take that and adjust how we do work. So just a couple of quick norms. Let's all presume good intent. Everybody here cares about kids and cares about doing the best we can to get the best outcomes we can for all our kids. So let's always remind ourselves of that. Give and make space so others can be heard. If you've got something to say, for sure, we want to create space for that, but we also want to make space for others to give their input. Feel free to use the chat. It will be monitored. So staff, if you see things that come up, feel free to address it right in the chat, or if folks need to come off mute, they'll have an opportunity for that. We're going to stick to an hour. I want to respect folks' time, so we'll make sure that we started on time, we'll finish on time. I do have a newsletter. If you feel like the District 3, this call isn't enough, you want more content, I'll put that information in the chat. You can feel free to sign in. That comes out monthly. I think just a heads up, I think we're talking about evolving these community meetings. The board is working on a plan to maybe make these a little bit more cross-functional across the district. So I'm going to keep doing these as long as folks keep showing up and have questions. But if there may be something new coming down the road. So I'm going to do first a couple minutes of updates, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Freeman to talk about some findings from give us an overview of the signature programs that she presented at the last board meeting, and then we'll have a good chunk of time for Q&A and other questions that are on folks' minds. So just a couple quick high-level updates since we last talked. We've welcomed Dr. Johnson to the district. I think that's not breaking news. He's been here for about a month. He's been around the district, and I think he's been to every District 3 school. I think he's been to 50. I think the last time I talked to him, he said he's been to 50 of our 87 schools in the first few weeks. So he's definitely getting out there. I think we've been through the selection process, so I won't necessarily spend a lot of time on that. We're just excited about his career of achievement. We're excited that he is a kid enrolled in Atlanta Public Schools. Matter of fact, he came to Virginia Highland. Dr. Johnson was at Virginia Highland this past week. Got a chance to talk to a bunch of parents. I think that was a good exchange, and you'll hear more about more community meetings coming down the road. As a matter of fact, if somebody can put the link to the community meeting schedule in the chat, I think those are scheduled. I think he's going to be in every cluster over the next 6-7 weeks. So that schedule is out there. So we'll make sure that link gets out there. Day one came and went without incident. District was almost completely staffed. We still have some vacancies popping up, which is going to happen in a large system. But in general, we were in a much better place than we have been in previous years. So we're excited about that. Graduation dates are finalized for next year. For those of you that are already looking at your calendar, and I'll make sure to put that link in the chat. It'll also be in my newsletter if you're worried. If you're like me and you've got a kid walking the stage this year and you want to make sure that you get your scheduling straight. Enrollment, I know we have Dr. Brack on here, so we can talk about this a little bit later. The Midtown Jackson clusters continue to be destinations for folks. They're both at and are above capacity, and so we went through the leveling process to try to get resources aligned there. But in general, it's not, we have a lot of work to do there, but in general, it's not our worst case fears in terms of enrollment. And as a matter of fact, in October, I've asked on the work session items, if you come to the board meeting in October, we're going to have a detailed presentation from Mr. Norvell and Mr. Hoskins about the district's approach to enrollment and redistricting and rezoning and how we go through that process. I think that would be useful for Dr. Johnson to hear, for the board to hear. It's been a minute since we've gone through those processes. So if you come to the October meeting, that's what you'll get. All right, so now we're gonna. So I just want to make sure I see Jessica Johnson from our at-large district. Great to see you, Jessica. Are there other board members here that I'm missing? Okay, well, folks, just Howard. So thank you for being here, Jessica. So now we're going to talk. We're going to lift up the signature program conversation that was at the last board meeting. That was a much longer presentation. I've asked Dr. Freeman just to present a couple slides because I think it's important the community understand this structure and kind of where it's going. I'll just offer a quick reflections. Things I like about the signature model is each cluster has an identity. I think that's great. These are research-based practices, both STEM certification and IB. Lots of solid evidence that these things work, and it creates coherence in the cluster, and I think that's important. And I was also really impressed with the breadth of AP offerings. Here's some things that I have questions about. Are these signature programs evolving with our students and our communities? Like, are these the only two signature offerings that we think are appropriate? Is this something we want to explore in the future? And how would we go about that? How would we explore additional options? So those are some things I think where we're going. But let me ask Dr. Freeman kind of just to recap. I asked her to share a few slides, and then we'll have some question and answer just about signature programs, and then we'll move into broader discussion. So with that, Dr. Freeman, share your knowledge with us. And Dr. Freeman, by the way, is our CTE director at the district. Sorry. Go ahead, Dr.
Hey, Dr. Freeman, you're still on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Can you see this slide okay? Excellent. Well, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present on signature programming and share a little bit about advanced placement. I have my colleagues here, Drs. Warren Edwards and Thea Murphy, the IB and STEM specialists, coordinators, excuse me, for the district here to share and to answer any questions as well when we get to that point. So we want to start by just sharing where the IB and STEAM clusters are. Our IB clusters are Jackson, Mays, North Atlanta, and Therrell. All schools in those clusters are IB, along with Wesley International Charter and Atlanta Neighborhood Charter Middle School specifically. Our STEAM clusters are Carver, Douglas, Midtown, South Atlanta, and Washington. Our BEST and CSK, our single gender academies, are STEAM schools as well. And then we have Drew Charter, Carver Partner Schools, and Centennial Academy. So we're often asked about the outcomes of signature programming for our students, and many of the benefits for both IB and STEM are not always directly quantifiable, but research shows that both IB and STEM improve post-secondary readiness and outcomes. For STEM education, the National Association for the Education of Young Children reports that STEM instruction leads to better language and literacy outcomes. And the National Math and Science Institute report that STEM education supports career readiness, as well as technology, problem solving, analytical, critical thinking skills, all of which are targeted outcomes on our SoftG board goal for post-graduation readiness. Similarly, for an IB education, research boasts the programming's ability to adequately prepare students for academic agency, engagement, and achievement. In 2024, the IB organization reported that DP and CP students surpassed the national averages in not only college enrollment, but also persistence and college graduation within 6 years. So in 23-24, some of the highlights that stood out for our STEAM signature program included some new lab installations. We put a lot of focus in aligning our STEAM learner profile with our social emotional learning books of the month. We are currently continuing to support 5 schools that are entering the Georgia Department of Education certification process, which increases school and system-wide collaborations. And then embedding STEAM into our school's identity so that STEAM implementation is understood to be embedded in our overall framework for teaching and learning and not perceived as separate or isolated. For IB, some of our highlights for last school year continuing into this year would be 7 IB schools hosted their evaluation visits, and our newly authorized schools completed their first grade 5 exhibitions, which are very special. It's when students have the opportunity to share their inquiries into important issues in their communities. We also had 3 schools to complete their authorization visits, and 7 programs have been authorized since 2022, which we know is oftentimes a 2 to 3 year process. So we are very, very proud to have so many to be progressing since COVID. A final notable highlight for IB that we like to share is that our diploma program at Farrell High School and the career-related program at Mays High School were amongst, they had their inaugural classes in the class of 2024. And you see the Farrell group pictured here. So we're often asked about the funding for signature programs also. So each school is allocated funds based on their program. The allocation amount is determined by the school's implementation phase. We have 4 phases of implementation. And then we also take into consideration the projected student enrollment. So the base allocation is the cost or the equates to the salary of an instructional coach. Every school has a signature program coach in their building that progresses this work on a daily basis. And as schools progress in the implementation of their program, the need for additional coaches increases. So that's how we go from part-time up to 2 full-time coaches. The per student allocation equates to a percentage of the APS base rate per pupil. And again, that increases as well as the students increase in implementation. So this slide here shows what those 4 phases are for the base and per student allocation, as well as the progressive increase over time since we've been doing signature program. And then our final slide is just showing a summary of the advanced placement offerings that we have in our schools. Right now, we are showing 147 offerings over 30 different courses. So we are very proud of the progress that's being made with our advanced placement, and also just want to offer that advanced placement is just one of the 3 ways that we expose our students to advanced academics. So these 147 courses is compared also with our IB program, as well as dual enrollment opportunities through traditional dual enrollment and early college. So that concludes the slides that we were asked for, Dr. Zeff.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman. This was super helpful, and I love this slide because obviously you think about the whole district and the rigor of AP, but the Midtown and Jackson, North Atlanta clusters. I mean, our students are challenged and have real opportunities for rigor, and there's something about AP that is kind of the universal standard rigor. So I appreciate this. There was a question from Lisa Olmstead about how to change. So, and really, it's a question that I kind of raised at the beginning. How does the signature program evolve? These have been set for 6-7 years. What is the prospect? What happens next? What is the evolution process for the signature programs?
So we conducted like an overall analysis at the 5-year mark. So that was going into last school year. We made some adjustments with some expectations for some programs. We kind of gave it a little bit more focus during the APS 5 campaign of a previous administration. We've only of recent in full honesty, been asked about other possibilities beyond STEM and IB as signature programs. When we started this process back in 2014, 2015, a lot of it, and I know I have some colleagues on here that could give us all the specific timeline, but it was much of an effort with a charter system application and a community-wide campaign of sorts to get feedback from all stakeholders. You can imagine the buy-in necessary to get an entire cluster to commit to one program in general. So there was a huge lift over no less than a year to come to terms with what the two options would be. We did start off with 3. College and career readiness was the one for Midtown and Carver Early College. And then so our agreement to signature programs was to have an outside agency that was responsible for making sure that we were pursuing and implementing programs with fidelity. The college and career readiness model, the agency that was going to be that certifying outside body, dissolved of sorts. They merged and then decided to shift from the type of work that we needed. And so that's why we had to pivot for Midtown and Carver Early College to choose another program. And at the time, the best options were what we had already established, which was IB and STEM. So I don't want to say that it's off the table to explore. I think the bigger question is the capacity and the runway to be able to initiate the similar process again. And so I'll be more than happy to engage with what that looks like if we get to that point.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And again, I feel very good about these. There's a lot of research behind both these strategies. I guess I'm a big fan of the charter system and Go teams, and so I would encourage folks to, this is something to talk with your Go teams. If these things are working for you and you feel good about them, then let's double down. If not, I think there's an opportunity to continue that conversation. Other questions, and then maybe somebody can check the chat. So there's a question around AP virtual options. Do you want to speak to that, Dr. Freeman?
Absolutely. So the AP virtual options still exist. I think a lot through our Atlanta Virtual Academy, there's quite a few courses that are available for students to take it. I think there has been a desire to expand the hybrid model that we spoke of with the Sutton Middle School and Sylvan Middle School, and a teacher from one location supported students at a different one. We've talked about the possibility of itinerant teachers as well. Looking to give students an option for courses that were not offered in their own building through a hybrid model. We're also, beyond schedule, we're also contending with the course selection and the process so early on that's needed to be able to make provisions for students to have that hybrid model. And so we are definitely exploring it now that Dr. Johnson is here. We have, a recap for him to understand where we are and to get some guidance on what we can implement for next school year. So I just want to reiterate, it's not that the students don't have access to virtual classes. It's the hybrid specific model between multiple locations that we don't have in place right now. And so we're looking at what that looks like for some of the AP Access courses, strengthening some of the diversity in courses that are offered at every school. And those are the options that we have on the table to discuss with Dr. Johnson now.
I appreciate that. Before we open it up to general Q&A, is there any other questions? Anything from the chat on signature programs? To see. Okay. Next prescription I'm starting to up. Okay, Keith, do you want to move us into general Q&A then?
Yes, sir. And so good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another school year. Thank you so much for joining us for our first District 3 community meeting for the 2024-2025 school year. As Dr. Zeff has said, we have allocated 1 hour for this meeting. And so we do want to make sure we hear from all those who wish to provide some comments or just engage with Dr. Zeff for any administration. And so as Cindy has already done, we ask that you do raise your hand so we can place you into the queue, and we'll call on you as we see your hand goes up. And so Dr. Zeff, if you're ready, we will go with Cindy and then we'll move forward.
Let's go. Hey, Cindy.
Hey, how you doing? There's a rumor that Washington High is closing. I know that's not her district, but as a board member, can she just kind of tell me where they are with a real decision about Washington closing and how soon or what's the reason for it closing?
Yeah, there's no, what you described as a rumor is just a rumor. There's no conversation in any conversation I've been a part of that talks about Washington High School closing. I think that there's broader conversations about district boundaries and capacity, but that's just a rumor. There's nothing that's come before the board, nothing that's, I'm not in every conversation that happens out in the world, but I have not heard any conversation about Washington. As a matter of fact, we're about to celebrate the big anniversary. So yeah, I don't believe that. I think that's nothing but a rumor.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say though, there is an opportunity. That's why in October, I mentioned this at the beginning. I think there is a lot of confusion, or maybe not even confusion. Just we need to level set on what the process is as we look at capacity and sort of right sizing. If we need to move boundaries or increase capacity in one part of the district or another. And that process is going to be described at the October work session. So we're going to do that in public session so everyone understands. We're going to have the district staff. We have a lot of board policy on this walk through for the community, for Dr. Johnson, for the board to hear the opportunities there. So I appreciate you raising that.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa.
Hi, I did put a lot of comments in the chat and some I'll probably just email you separately about. I'm gonna try and go through them quickly. I know not everything will have an answer today. In the meeting with Dr. Johnson this week that happened at Virginia Highland Elementary, a question came up about the org chart and changes at central office. And I'm curious, and I think we would benefit from knowing what changes came out of budgeting constraints at the at central office versus what changed due to superintendent priorities. I think it just would be helpful in understanding if that's possible. And Ken, I've emailed you in the past questions about assessments. There just seems to be a lot of confusion among parents at what assessments are required, who's developing them, whether they go into the grades, and if they're aligning with the curriculum or the standards. And then specifically about what you've talked about today with signature programming, my question in the chat really had to do around the rezoning, redistricting discussion. Because if you're taking kids from an IB cluster and moving them into a STEM, or vice versa, that's a big open uncertainty for parents, I think. And if we're talking about rezoning, I think it would be nice to have some details around how that would be handled, specifically if they're already on the high school graduation path. And I am concerned when I hear about additional potential signature programmings, not because I'm against it, the idea, but I've watched what Midtown has had to go through in the last couple of years with having to drop what they were working towards and pivot to a new one. And it concerns me that that's something that could come up again. I felt like that was a surprise to the Midtown cluster when it happened in the last go around. I think it happened after the last charter renewal. And I always like to hear you talk about Go Teams, but I think separately, there's a lot of confusion at the school level about what they actually can do, because I often hear you talk about, oh, this would be a great thing for the Go Teams, but when Go Team members get into their meetings, it seems like what they are charged with is actually quite a bit more narrow So I know that was a lot. I tried to get, and I know you can't answer all of them, but I wanted to get them out there.
I appreciate that, Lisa, and so Grace, if I forget something here, and you're, as you said, we're not going to get all the answers here. This is feedback, and so we're taking notes here. Your first question around around the what's happening in the central office. So I think Dr. Johnson will talk about his vision and alignment in these community meetings. But a couple of themes that he shared that I think I feel comfortable sharing is that he's identified that there's an opportunity to bring different departments together around curriculum, around assessment, around principal management. That you have programs, that you have strategies that are floating around and not all anchored. Because don't forget, the principal is where all this stuff lands, and so the principal has to. We have to be conscious of what's showing up at the principal's desk, and the principal has input in all those things. And so I think he sees the principal supervisor, which I believe he's kind of going to be calling the cluster superintendent, as really that fulcrum, as really that key lever. And so he wants to organize around that. And so there's some reorganization that's in the process. But I think, it's been 17 days, I think he's been on the job. So I think those are some themes. I think during these community meetings, I think it's a very fair question to ask him. But those are some of the themes that he's identified, at least to me. As far as the budget, what of that is driven by the budget? I see Dr. Bracken on the call. My sense is this isn't really driven by, these are kind of separate realities. Dr. Bracken, do you have anything to add on the central office cuts?
No, I think you nailed it. Good morning, everybody. The May board materials in Assembly does discuss through any changes to personnel because of the budget process for FY 2025. So it will recap during the budget section. We talk about the budget parameters, and there was a very targeted reduction of central office budgets in order to fund some of the school-based priorities, like our significant increases in compensation. So there was a targeted budget approach to central office during the FY 2025 budget development process. I think that is distinct and different from any organizational changes that may be happening real time, and I'm sure will continue to be fleshed out as we get through our first 100 days. I will say we will continue to streamline budgets. We talked about this during the budget development process last year, that there are budget pressures that we will begin to discuss as soon as we kick off the budget commission meetings in September. So we will be starting to talk about any changes to central office or schools or anything else because of budget as we begin the budget planning process in FY 26.
Thank you for that, Dr. Bracken. The other thing I would add is that one thing Dr. Johnson's communicated to me is that these central office reorganizations should be budget neutral. He is not intending to add positions. It's more about realigning responsibilities. You asked about assessment. I know you have emailed me about that. That's a technical set of questions that we're gonna take back. We need to obviously get clear with our community. It came up in the Virginia Highland discussion. It's come up in many community meetings about what's required, what's federal, what's state, what's district, and so we'll make sure to take that back. Your question about signature program rezoning, I think, is right on. I think that would be that'd be a factor that would be considered in any rezoning, is having kids move from one lane or one pathway to another, and so I think that we'd have to look at that with clear eyes. Additional, and then you asked the questions had to do about the authority, the GO team. And so when we talk about additional signature programs, there's no sense there. Look, I firmly believe in the GO team, and I appreciate the push, and I hear it from Jennifer Keenan over at Midtown and all our GO teams, that they want to get clear about their authority. And I believe this is something the board has responsibility to push the administration to do. And I appreciate the feedback. It's helpful. We need to make sure our GO teams have real authority and be real clear about what's inbounds and what's out of bounds. I take that feedback. I received that. I think in the budget process, you're starting to see more. But when you run into brick walls of things that you think you have authority over and you don't, and you're told no, we need to look into it, and we need to make sure that it's a priority, because it's not just what I believe, it's a contract we signed. as a district. So I believe that is the center of where APS needs to go. So more to come on that. I think I got through your 5 points. Keith, let's keep the train going.
All righty. So our next speaker is JK. Let's see.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi. My name is Jamila Cates, and is it okay to speak about personnel issues on here?
It is not.
Yeah, unfortunately, we
Okay.
can't discuss personnel.
But I would
Okay.
encourage you to email, either use Let's Talk or email me offline. We'll connect you with the right folks. But no, we really want to keep this at policy.
What is okay to talk about on here?
Policy questions, feedback on what you're experiencing in schools, but we want to stay away from individuals or Keith, you probably have the guardrails more articulate than I do.
Yeah, well, Ken, you pretty much stated we can't just discuss personnel. Those are private matters that again, as Ken pointed out, we'll just direct you to the right people to voice those concerns to. This platform is only for district 3, district as a whole, and any feedback, so things you just want to share.
Okay. So then I won't say any names because I think that's what y'all are saying. Personally, I can't say any names, but for me, when it comes to like the pouch situation at Midtown High School, I have already expressed my concerns as a parent that I did not want my children's cell phones to be pouched. I was never sent a letter by the principal, and I was never sent any type of contact whatsoever from the company Yonder, who I guess sells the pouches. I was never given any emails whatsoever from either one of them. When I raised my concerns, when I first found out about it at the beginning of the school year, I explained to the principal, hey, I don't want my children's cell phones put in pouches. Just to be brief, she said, okay. She said they won't be in pouches. Next thing I know, my children's cell phones were being put in pouches anyway, without my consent. The thing that alarms me about that is because their actual doctor had already told me as a parent that he did not feel comfortable with me taking away their cell phones, even as a disciplinary effect that I was using, and that it was considered like their security blanket. And I was glad he told me that. Can y'all hear me okay? Y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
You're still there.
I don't want to get too far into this. If your concern is about the cell phone policy in Midtown, maybe let's keep it up at that level.
That's what I'm doing.
So,
can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when I raised my concerns and the principal agreed, like, your children's pouches won't be put in pouches, it should have just been that. Why then were their cell phones still and are still being put in pouches? Also, if their doctor had already raised concerns years ago for me as a parent taking away their cell phones, how is it that you are allowing a school to ban cell phones? And that's pretty much what putting their pouches in the cell phone is banning them, not restricting them, but banning them. Because the board policy does not say anything about banning cell phones. It says it's restricted during school hours, and it gets very specific about what time during school hours that the children can have their cell phones. Also, beyond that, I have another issue where specifically to Midtown High School, there was a child that was essayed on school property during school hours. I have a concern about that because I have children that actually attend the high school there, and nothing was ever shared with me as a parent, neither email, neither verbally, nothing. And these are the types of things that I am concerned about, because there should be a policy in place when any type of crime like that happens. Parents should be properly notified, period. This is a policy issue, but it is also an awareness and a communication issue. Parents should be properly notified when there's a crime, especially of that extent, including like children being essayed on school property during school hours. That should be conveyed to parents so that we can understand what's going on. We can understand what the school is doing about it and things of that nature. The other thing that I have issue about is you all do not have a streamlined, like I had a major issue with the Virginia Highlands current principal years ago. He expelled out of all the principals in the
JK,
history.
I gotta stop you there. JK,
I'm sorry.
I gotta stop you there. We're not gonna talk about specific students here. I would
Okay.
say let's talk offline.
Oh, it's not a student specifically.
Well, but let me because I want to make room for other folks to, and let me respond to.
Well, can I make this one last comment?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. He demoted more African American boys and demoted more African American women staff and teachers than the history of any principal in the history of Atlanta Public Schools. There's no way for me as a parent to say anything. If I have a problem with a principal.
JK, that's a very serious claim. That's a personnel issue. That's exactly what we don't want to talk about on this call. Let's talk offline. And before we make some serious claims like that. As far as the cell phone policy at Midtown, I also have 2 kids at Midtown High School. I do feel like that the communication, I apologize for the communication to get through. They've spent a good 8 or 9 months in the communication there.
What I'm saying is there is no streamlined way. If I have an issue with one particular personnel person, there.
Hold on. Board member Zeff was speaking. And so right now, as he stated, we cannot go into those kind of allegations right now. And so again,
I'm speaking about policy though. There is nothing that, like, if I have an issue
hold
with a principal, there is nothing in place for me to voice my concerns. There's nothing.
JK, I just told you to call me. I'm happy to connect you with HR so we can work through that process. Okay. And so let's leave that where it is. On the cell phone policy, if you have a specific issue, it is board policy, it's district policy not to allow schools and cell phones to be used during school hours. And so if Midtown's policy is aligned with that. If you have a special circumstance, then if your child is 504 or something like that, I think we can talk about that offline too. But it is what the Midtown policy is within board policy to allow. It doesn't have to be in the yonder pouch. My daughter actually leaves her cell phone at home now because she doesn't want to carry the pouch around. So we're not taking phones away from kids, but it is board policy to restrict use during the day. So let's talk offline if you want to talk about some personnel. I put my information in the chat. All right, Keith, let's keep going.
All right, our next speaker is Tamara. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to clarify back on the assessment issue, because I heard you say, you're going to go back and, review with everybody in the administration what's state required and stuff. I think what people are talking about and what I've experienced, and I can't speak for everyone, is that it's the district developed common assessments, not any sort of outside, mandated testing. It's what the district is using to assess student performance, like we're taking the quiz or the unit tests or, I'm misspeaking on the names of them, but it is the district developed assessments that don't seem to be aligned with the new state math standards that the teachers are using. So when they're taking these tests, sometimes it's material that they haven't covered. And that seems to be the issue that I'm hearing the most from people about that.
Yeah, that issue came up at the Virginia Highland conversation too. It's something that Dr. Johnson's heard, and and I think at these community meetings he's going to talk about creating. I think there are cases where the alignment's not there, and that needs to be. There's nothing that drives parents crazier than an assessment where the kid walks out feeling like walks in like they know the material, and they walk out where the assessment didn't measure, wasn't fair, those are the kind of testing that drives people crazy. He's heard that, he's looking into it. And so I suspect you're going to hear more about I will say what he's done already is to bring assessment into the academic office and not have it distinct. And so I think that's part of where some of these issues might be arising. But I would say the feedback is received and more to come.
Thank you.
Samara.
All
Keith?
right, thank you. So right now, I don't see any hands up. Or I'm checking. Okay, we have Cassandra. Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you all for hosting this. This is my first meeting here. This is very informative, especially since I've been following along with the board meeting. So thank you all just for opening up this space for community feedback. So during the last board meeting, I did see some data regarding discipline and how the discipline rates have not improved. And so I just kind of want more clarification about that as far as, do we know, like, what is it specifically? Is it within certain clusters? Is it like across the board with policy issues? Are there a lot of needs that are not being necessarily supported in the district, such as mental health needs? If you can talk a little bit more about that, that would be helpful to me.
I appreciate that, Cassandra. And it's something that I think we're experiencing APS and really experiencing it's metro wide, really across the country since COVID. The socialization of when kids have come back we've seen a real drop. We've seen really that in attendance are some of the legacies of kids being away for so long. The board policy committee is looking at our policy because we have disproportionate discipline. We have kids of color that are being specifically, I think they're looking at out of school suspension at higher rates than kids than kids who are not of color. Something, first we have to identify the problem. And to your question, like, we do have. We're working on restorative justice. We're working on ways to bring kids in. I think you'll hear more at the board policy committee meetings, which are, Keith, maybe you can put in the chat when the next board policy committee meetings are around discipline, but it is something that we're looking at. And we have to first we have to identify the challenges that we're up against, and then we have to deploy resources against it, but it's real. And I think that board policy is going to evolve to make sure that we're not putting kids out in disproportionate rates.
Thank you. And just a couple of things as a school psychologist, certain things when I hear about, especially race being one of the primary factors, maybe if the district can look into training regarding mindset of teachers and some of the biases they may hold. Also some mental health supports. A lot of times what's in the home is being trickling down into the schools, not even just the home, but even in the community. So even just maybe vamping up some more mental health supports. And believe it or not, peer mediation is a good thing to help with discipline as well, to have, other kids guide kids with, appropriate behaviors and what. But I do appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the number one discipline strategy is a relationship between a teacher and a kid, where the kid feels engaged in the work. And so hopefully we've improved we're working on, you gotta make sure teachers' mental health is well supported and teachers feel valued, so we can build some of those relationships. I think the raise that we gave teachers hopefully helps a little bit, but we have to build cultures of schools. I think you're exactly right, Cassandra. We have to build cultures of schools where kids feel seen. And then, thanks to Keith for putting the policy committee meeting in the chat. Okay, Keith.
All right, thank you. My next speaker is Ms. Sherelle, followed by we're gonna go back to Tamara and then to Waukesha. Good morning, Ms. Sherelle.
Good morning. I was trying to find out, we completed the audit on the special education department. And I was trying to find out, what are we actively doing to address those issues? I know that the superintendent has a 100-day plan and meetings going on, but the children we know have been marginalized the most have been the students in special education. And for what we can tell based on the study that just come out, that each child during COVID lost at least 1.5 years of study. So we know that there's a gap there. What are we actively doing to address that? and I'd like to participate on that board or that committee at least.
Thank you, Ms. Sherrill. Yeah, so just so folks catch, just so if folks don't know specifically what Ms. Sherrill's talking about, is there was an audit done because there were so many concerns about what was happening in special ed and the way we're supporting not just our teachers, but our kids, and were we honoring the IEPs, the requirements of these contracts that we have to support kids. And a lot of deficiencies were found. This report, I think it was June, that the report was published, and then Dr. Johnson joined in August. And it is one of the board's charges to Dr. Johnson to implement and to address these findings, because this is serious. This is important work, and it's not just the moral thing to do. We have a contract to support these kids, and we have to make sure that we're doing better. I take heart that Dr. Johnson was a special education teacher. That's where he started his career, and so he has a strong connection to this work. And so it's part of his 100-day plan. It's a good chunk of his 100-day plan. So I don't know if he's going to put a parent committee together. I'm not sure what the specifics are. Again, he's in day, I think, 17 or 18. But please hold us accountable for this. It is something, I think the audit was the right move, because now we have a common understanding what the issues are. No one's running from anything. We have to look at these issues, in order to, first rule of getting out of a hole is to stop digging. And so I think the audit gave us some clarity. And so now we look to Dr. Johnson to help us guide us through that.
So in respect to that, can you give me or I shouldn't say can you, but specifically, has the board looked at a timeline? Because you're talking about the audit was completed in June. It was prior to that, that we would noted that in 2014 that student with disability had an issue. So we're talking again, we're already 10 years behind. Then you're talking about 6 months. From 6 months was when they completed the audit. And now we're in the month of September, pretty much. So can the parents expect a committed timeline for at least starting to engage actively and seriously with parents? Because the students with disability don't have any more time to wait.
I agree, and that's why it's essential. I think his 100-day plan is in the chat, and it specifically spells out what he's going to do to build a plan at the end of his 100 days. We want to look at the end of the day. This work has to be implemented by the superintendent. He's the agent of he's the chief executor, and we have charged him to do that, and he has put in his 100-day plan. So I know it pains me to say, we can't wait. Now we have the audit. Now we know what the issues are, and so we're looking to him out of his first 100 days to develop that plan. So as I said, hold us accountable to it. I know you will, and I know our friends at Atlanta Thrive. I think I saw John Davis on here, some other folks on here that will hold us accountable for it. Please do. And I would say Dr. Johnson recognizes this as a top priority.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sherrill. Our next speaker is Tamara, followed by Waukesha.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sherrill, for highlighting that, and for Ken for acknowledging that it's a priority for monitoring how the superintendent deals with that. Because in the beginning of the school year, that's when we hear a lot about the kids trying to get their IEPs implemented and the problems in translating that from one grade to another, and it's always a high priority issue. But I just want to go back and make sure that I didn't mishear something earlier when we were talking about the AP classes and the AP offerings, because I really appreciate the efforts to expand AP offerings, to schools that don't have as many offerings as some others. And it has been a big focus. We've been pushing and talking for at least a year about trying to offer that in a hybrid manner, so kids at some schools can access at others. But I heard that, while we are going to try to expand the diversity of offerings at some schools, I thought I heard what was the thing? To shrink the offerings at some other schools. And perhaps I misheard that, and I just want to clarify.
Dr. Freeman, can I?
Yes, no intention to decrease any offerings anywhere else. Our goal for AP is definitely expansion. Perfect,
because I think we have all the technology in place to be able to do that, and we just need to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Tamara. I wouldn't want people to walk away.
Yes,
That's That's not what we want. We want to increase rigor and opportunity for kids.
All right, thank you, Tamara. And the time, just a time check, we have reached the 10-minute mark, and so we'll go to Waukesha, and then we'll see how that goes. And depending on when we end that time, Dr. Zeff, we'll probably end with comments, closing comments from you, and then take it from there. Good morning, Waukesha.
Good morning, sir. I like how you said that, depending on how they go. I just got 2 questions. Don't get excited.
I wasn't.
So
no point intended at all.
Keith, and welcome back. Hey Ken, how you doing? So this is my question. First, there's a lot of changes going on. I heard some people are moving out of roles, reapplying for roles, and etc. I'm straight shooting to the point. How is this going to affect our children? We got a new leadership. Fine, we are there. Now we're seeing people get shifted and moved. We at first I thought we had no vacancies, but now we have several vacancies. We're looking for new principals and etc. I think I heard a psychologist or somebody on, I'm not sure, but how does that affect our children? Because if a child spend years, or I'll say a year or two, adapting to an individual, they're here or they're gone, and even not just the child, the parent, the staff, how does that movement affect the kids, and have the board just really sat back and said, hold up, we need to get serious, and we need to think about how all this movement and transition is truly affecting our children? Because we talk about growth all the time, but does growth get us in college? Does growth get us jobs? We want to see our children mastering things, and we know the only way to do that is to have stable, healthy people in front of them that truly care about them. So first question, do anybody know how does that affect them?
Yeah, so Dr. Johnson, I think, is putting his team together and rearranging to map to his vision. And I mean, we have to recognize that, we the board hold the superintendent accountable, and so the superintendent needs to make sure that he hasn't brought in a bunch of new folks. I just want to make sure people understand kind of where we're at. He's had conversations with folks, trying to make sure that the alignment is there. And so, we support him. I think these are good questions for these community meetings. Because I think his vision's still evolving, but I don't want folks to think that there's been a massive turnover in leadership. I think he's going.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Now, every month we can look at how many people come in and go out, and I know I've seen hundreds in 1 month alone. So I'm not saying the turnover. I'm just asking in general, how does the change affect our students, our teachers, and staff members? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying bad, because if we have one person who left and they decent, then what we doing. Because see, we get the game. We know the game. With different leadership, they're going to bring in their own people. We already know that. I'm not asking that question. I'm asking, how does that affect the people who we're trying to make sure they have what they need in order to be productive citizens in Atlanta? That's all I'm saying, or in the world.
I appreciate that, and your question's right. I mean, we can't let adult issues get in the way of kid issues. The themes that I've heard him describe is that he felt that there were, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, so he'll have an opportunity to talk about these at the community meetings, but that we were too silent, that both things were just ending up at the principal's desk, and they were coming from curriculum, they're coming from assessment, they were coming from the principal's boss. And he's really trying to streamline that so the principal can focus on what the principal needs to focus on, and it's not driven by the central office, but driven by what's necessary at the schools. But the question you're asking, Waukesha, is exactly the right question. And as his vision becomes more full, and as I said, he's only in day 17, but after 100 days, and he has a full understanding of the team and the way he wants to organize the central office. That's the first question that if we have to ask that question is, how does this impact what the kid experiences every day? How does this experience what a teacher feels every day? So I think it's the right question. And
And my last question is this: how have y'all had a conversation about how do he plan on? Because we don't have these meetings. we had meetings during that 14-day period. So, you know, that is what it is. How do he plan on addressing overcrowdedness in some schools and under enrollment in other schools? Like, these are serious issues that we talked about in your meetings, anybody else meeting, at the board meeting, in the community, before he even came on. And he applied for this job before. So, I mean, I know he understands what's going on, but is there a clear plan on how he plans on addressing that? Because a school that have 200 kids, how do we keep that open? Or a school that got 2,000-3,000 kids, how do we manage? So have you heard any plans on that?
So you're asking all the tough questions, and it's the right question. What I've asked so would board members have the ability to ask for a work session, a topic every now and then. And so I've asked it for the October meeting, not for this next meeting, but for the October meeting, to have the Mr. Norvell, Mr. Hoskins describe the process where we talk about, you know, balancing our schools, where we talk about enrollment boundaries, where we bring up what is that community engagement process, what is that timeline. I want everyone in the community, I want that to be a super public look. These things only work when there's trust, and right now we got a trust gap. Let's just name it, right? We cannot make the changes that you described if we need to make any changes at all without building trust. And the way we build trust is by being transparent. So that's what.
So let me ask you this to close out. What about all the data in the community conversation that we had the previous year, like earlier this year and last year? Have you guys took that into consideration as we move forward with more engagement? You know, like where people were landing. We know how people feel about certain schools, but like, you know, at the end of the day, something has to change.
Agreed. That will all be part of the process. I know we're running out of time. How do you want to handle? I see a couple more.
So we have three. We do have three hands still raised. And so because of the second time, I do want to make sure we hear from those who we have not heard from. And so if we can go Shamika and then to Lauren, and then we have enough time. JK will come back to you. Good morning, Shamika.
Good morning. I'm a parent of a special education student, and not this district, but I know that everybody who is a part of the decision that I'm concerned about is on this line. The decision with having paras, we have a shortage on paras in pretty much all the schools, from my understanding, and no support for them, for the teachers. So my son is in a school where the teacher had to gain an additional class because that teacher had an altercation or situation. So now she has only still the same two paras, but have 14 kids, and there's no paras available. So what does the district decide to do on that part? Because it's unfair to my child to not be able to get the accommodations that he's needing, or any other child, when there's a shortage on paras. And from my understanding, it's a pay issue.
Well, so thank you for that, Shamika. And it sounds like it's not an APS. You're not talking about APS in particular, but yes, parapros are hard to find. We did give raises to parapros this past year. I'm not sure of the vacancy rate in APS right now. But there's a lot of turnover in that position. We'll take that back to make sure that we get updates on those numbers. My last check though was that the numbers were very good for vacancies in Atlanta Public Schools. Do we have time for Lauren?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Lauren, we could do a quick popcorn, and then we'll close out.
It's not a lengthy one. Hey Ken, I know it just because everyone's been talking about the overcrowding stuff and everything, and I know that for the last few months there's been a lot of like alluding that you guys are gonna have this big facilities retreat conversation in the fall. Is there like any indication when that's actually going to happen? The facilities conversation?
Yeah, so in October is when we start.
That's the October that you were referring to?
Correct. That's going to lay out the process, and then the actual data is still coming in, and so it won't be probably till I think December or January that we actually get into the details of it. But all that'll come up in October, and we'll get, because part of it is to bring Dr. Johnson along too. We have a lot of board policy here And so I want to do that all in public. And so that will be.
But October will just be when the presentation that you requested happened,
Correct.
not like a specific retreat like you guys normally do, a facilities conversation retreat where it's like several hours.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the facilities retreat. Let me take that back.
Yeah, we'll have to come back. Yeah, get an answer for that one, Ken.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you all for this engagement. First of all, thanks, Keith. Keith is on paternity leave and he's calling in here, and so God bless you, Keith. Deanna, I saw you had some questions in the chat around accountability. I'm gonna just try and popcorn that. Thank you for putting those in the chat. Yes, that is something we need to set those goals for the superintendent. We want to give him a chance to work through the 100-day plan, and then we will have those conversations with him that are aligned, so we make it clear what he's being held accountable to as he does this work. I think that is it. Folks can always reach out to me. Thank you. We have a board meeting on Tuesday. It's at 2:30 is the work session. Community meetings, I think, is at 6. And I'm going to continue doing these meetings as long as folks want to be a part of them. My contact information is in the chat. I'll put it in again. And again, thank you all for your.
And when will we get a notice of that meeting? Will that come out today?
Yeah, that should come out today. Yeah, that should come out today.
Great. Thank you.
I think it's supposed to come out by 5.
Okay.
I've actually pushed them to try and get out earlier. There's a lot of last minute things that come up, but yes, it'll come out by 5.
Okay.
And Dion said, please answer if work sessions will be streamed. I think they are the work session of the board meeting will be streamed. I think I think they should all be streamed. If there's some technical reason why they're not, I don't have the answer to that, but we can.
Yes, board meetings are always live stream on the YouTube channel, Dion.
Right. I think these retreats.
So the change with the retreats, the work sessions, and the board meetings, can you please commit that those will be streamed? Because the location of having these meetings at the airport during the day is very challenging. And we're talking about facilities, work sessions, and retreats and other items. I think we need to commit to the community that those are available and streamed so that people who can't attend them in person can access that information.
I don't disagree, Dion. I will say the retreat this weekend was a training. It was not just so folks understand, it was just a training to the board. There was no discussion of policy or board action, but I don't disagree that it should be live streamed. I think there were some technical issues.
But there was executive session availability for that meeting. So, and there was quorum. So these are meetings that historically have been streamed.
I have no philosophical disagreement with that. I'm not sure. So why that training was not televised. I will take it up with the chair, and I think that's our desire to have those televised. We got to build trust. Transparency is the way we do that. Everybody have a long weekend. Enjoy. Do something nice for yourself, and hopefully we'll see something at the board meeting on Tuesday. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat one more time. So if folks need anything, and again, I'm not going to stop putting the District 3 newsletter in the chat either, because that is it's just a great way to find out what's going on in our district. Thank you, Keith, for paternity leave. Thank you, Jessica, and everyone for being here.
Yes, sir.
We'll see y'all soon.
All right, everyone, exit ticket is a wave.